Within the grand halls of the historic Baker Mansion in Altoona, Pennsylvania, stands a heavy glass display case. Inside this sealed glass box hangs an elegant silk wedding dress from the mid-1800s. The fabric is pristine, but untouched by any living bride. Yet visitors often see the heavy fabric swaying violently in the still air. The unnatural movements of the fabric defy all logic and reason. There are no drafts in the sealed museum room, and the floorboards are thick and sturdy. The dress twists and billows as if caught in a phantom waltz. It dances to a silent song that only the tragic spirit of its owner can hear from the beyond. To understand this terrifying phenomenon, one must look back to the dark history of the Baker family. Elias Baker was a powerful and wealthy ironmaster who ruled his family with absolute authority. He built a towering stone mansion to showcase his immense wealth and immense pride. He controlled every aspect of his empire and his growing children. Elias believed his family was superior to the local townsfolk, who worked in his fiery iron furnaces. His daughter Anna Baker was his prized possession. She was raised in absolute luxury and groomed to marry into another wealthy industrial family. Elias viewed her future marriage strictly as a strategic business transaction to increase his own financial power. Anna, however, possessed a romantic and rebellious heart that clashed violently with her father's cold ambitions. She despised the shallow, high society suitors that her father brought to their grand dining room. She longed for a genuine connection and true love. She spent her days wandering the massive estate, dreaming of a life outside her gilded cage. Fate intervened one crisp autumn afternoon when Anna visited the roaring iron furnaces on the edge of the property. Through the thick smoke and glowing embers, she locked eyes with a young iron worker. He was poor and covered in dark soot, but his kind eyes captured her absolute attention. A forbidden and dangerous spark ignited immediately. The young man worked tirelessly in the grueling heat of the Allegheny furnace. He possessed no wealth and no aristocratic title, but he treated Anna with genuine warmth and deep respect. They began meeting in secret under the thick canopy of trees, far from the watchful eyes of her strict father. Their hidden romance blossomed rapidly. Knowing the terrible wrath her father would unleash, they kept their deep affection entirely hidden. Anna would slip out of the massive stone mansion under the cover of darkness. They whispered sweet promises of a shared future while sitting along the quiet banks of the nearby river. Their love was pure, but incredibly dangerous in that era. The young iron worker finally proposed to Anna under a pale autumn moon. He promised to take her away from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and build a quiet life together. Anna accepted his proposal with tears of absolute joy. They began planning a secret wedding completely away from the suffocating influence of the rich and powerful Elias Baker. Consumed by her dreams of a happy future, Anna decided to purchase a wedding gown. She enlisted the help of a sympathetic servant to travel to a distant city. They returned with an exquisitely crafted white silk dress decorated with beautiful lace. Anna hid the magnificent garment deep within her massive bedroom closet to await her wedding. Anna would often lock her bedroom door and take the beautiful silk dress out of its dark hiding place. She would hold it against her body and dance silently in front of her tall mirror. She imagined the incredible joy of walking down the aisle toward the man she truly loved. Her heart was full of hope, but secrets in a house full of servants and spies rarely stay hidden for long. A jealous maid discovered the hidden silk dress and immediately reported the incredible find to Elias Baker. The Iron Master flew into a terrifying rage. The very idea of his beautiful daughter marrying a poor common laborer was a direct insult to him. Elias stormed into Anna's bedroom and tore the room apart until he found the hidden silk dress. He screamed at his daughter and demanded the name of her secret lover. Anna wept bitterly, but refused to betray the young man. However, Elias was a powerful man who owned the entire town and easily uncovered the awful truth. The confrontation between Elias and the young iron worker was swift and completely merciless. Elias used his immense wealth and terrible influence to ruin the young man. He had the worker fired from the furnace and threatened him with total destruction. Elias ordered the man to leave Altoona, Pennsylvania forever, or face extremely dire and fatal consequences. Fearing for his very life and the safety of Anna, the heartbroken young man fled the city in the dead of night. He never returned to the towering stone mansion or the roaring furnaces. Anna awoke the next morning to discover that her true love had vanished without a single trace. Her heart shattered into countless pieces. Elias believed he had solved the terrible problem and saved his family reputation. He locked Anna in her bedroom and demanded she forget the poor worker entirely. He told her she would eventually marry a wealthy man of his choosing. But Elias severely underestimated the sheer stubbornness and absolute deep sorrow of his completely broken daughter. Anna refused to leave her room for many weeks. She wept over the beautiful, unworn silk dress and cursed her father's cruel ambition. She made a dark and terrible vow to the empty room. If she could not marry the man she truly loved, she would never marry at all. She would die an old, lonely maid. True to her bitter word, Anna actively drove away every single wealthy suitor her father presented to her. She insulted rich businessmen and ignored powerful politicians. She transformed from a bright and hopeful young woman into a cold and furious spirit. The atmosphere inside the grand stone mansion became incredibly heavy with with resentment and unspoken anger. The beautiful silk dress remained locked away in a dark cedar chest. It served as a constant tragic reminder of the joyous life that was violently stolen from her. Anna would sometimes open the heavy chest just to stare at the pristine fabric. The white silk slowly turned a pale yellow as the long, terrible decades passed. Elias Baker never apologized for his cruel actions. He continued to build his massive iron empire and rule his family with a literal iron fist. But his relationship with his daughter was completely destroyed forever. They lived in the same massive house, but operated as total strangers who shared nothing but mutual contempt and dark, bitter silence. The once vibrant Anna aged into a deeply eccentric and extremely angry older woman. She spent her final years wandering the long, empty hallways of the mansion entirely alone. The servants whispered that she was losing her mind. She would often be heard crying out for her lost lover in the middle of the dark, cold night. Elias Baker finally died, leaving behind a complicated legacy of incredible wealth and total misery. Anna felt no sorrow at his passing. She remained trapped in the very house that had served as her grand, luxurious prison. The sprawling estate felt more like a grand mausoleum than a family home as the 20th century slowly began. In 1914, Anna Baker took her final breath in her grand childhood bedroom. She died exactly as she had promised, as a completely bitter and entirely unmarried woman. The tragedy of her ruined life seemed to soak directly into the thick walls of the house, but her story was nowhere near its actual chilling, supernatural conclusion. Following the death of the last Baker, family members, the massive property was eventually abandoned. The local historical society later purchased the grand stone mansion and transformed it into a public museum. They worked incredibly hard to restore the old rooms to their original glory. They uncovered many forgotten artifacts hidden away in the dark, dusty attics. Among the recovered items was the tragic, beautiful silk wedding dress. Museum curators decided to display the historic garment in the former bedroom of Anna Baker. They placed the yellowing silk dress upon a simple mannequin and sealed it tightly inside a heavy glass case. They believed it was a perfect historical artifact of the old era. Almost immediately, strange and terrifying events began to plague the museum staff. Tour guides opening the house in the early morning would find the heavy glass case completely covered in a fine mist. The mist only appeared on the inside of the thick glass. Cold spots completely enveloped the grand bedroom, dropping the temperature extremely fast. The most chilling phenomenon occurred when the museum was completely quiet. Staff members dusting the antique furniture would hear the distinct rustling of heavy fabric. They would look toward the sealed glass display case and gasp in absolute horror. The empty silk dress would be violently shaking and swaying, as if a frantic invisible woman wore it. The dancing dress became a terrifying legend in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Visitors from all over the country flocked to the museum, hoping to witness the paranormal activity. Many skeptics tried to debunk the phenomenon by searching for hidden drafts or unstable floorboards. They found absolutely nothing that could logically explain the violent movement of the ancient silk fabric. During nights of the full moon, the supernatural activity grows even more intense. The delicate lace around the neckline flutters wildly against the thick glass. The heavy skirt kicks out as if the unseen bride is twirling in a fast, dramatic circle. The empty sleeves lift and wave, mirroring the frantic movements of a ghostly, tragic waltz. One terrified night watchman reported hearing faint phantom music drifting down the main staircase. He followed the eerie sound directly to Anna's bedroom. Through the thick glass, he watched the pale yellow dress spin violently off its wooden mannequin. It hovered in the cold air for a few seconds before dropping dead and lifeless to the floor. The museum administration eventually decided to move the cursed glass case to a different room. They hoped changing the location would somehow settle the restless, angry spirit. They carefully transported the heavy box to the main parlor downstairs, but the terrifying phantom waltz simply followed the ancient silk dress directly to its brand new display location. Paranormal investigators have spent countless nights locked inside the dark museum. They have recorded strange electronic voice phenomena near the glass case. The chilling audio recordings often capture the faint sounds of a woman softly crying. Sometimes a harsh male voice can be heard aggressively, shouting a single word, demanding that the invisible weeping woman remain entirely quiet. Some psychics who visit the mansion claim the angry spirit of Elias Baker also haunts the dark corridors. They believe the father and daughter are trapped in their bitter feud. Elias continues trying to control Anna from beyond the grave. Anna defies him by violently dancing in the wedding dress he completely forbade her to wear. Visitors who stand too close to the dancing dress often report feeling a crushing weight on their chests. A profound sense of total absolute sorrow washes over them without warning. Some sensitive guests burst into sudden, uncontrollable tears. They feel the total heartbreak of a woman who spent her entire life waiting for a man who never returned. During one particular historical tour, a young bride to be mocked the tragic legend of the dancing dress. She laughed loudly and tapped her fingers aggressively on the heavy glass. The pale yellow silk instantly stopped swaying. A massive unseen force shattered the glass panel outward, sending sharp, heavy shards flying directly toward the terrified, screaming young woman. After that violent incident, the museum replaced the display with much thicker, reinforced safety glass. They placed small warning signs asking visitors to show absolute respect to the historical artifacts. The staff knows that Anna Baker demands total reverence for her broken heart. The dancing dress is not a cheap trick, but a manifestation of true profound pain. Security cameras positioned in the room frequently malfunction or record absolutely nothing but dense static. When the digital feeds finally clear, the position of the dress has often completely changed. The long train of the gown shifts from the left side to the right. The fabric appears heavily wrinkled, as if someone had just stepped out. Several local residents, driving past the grand stone mansion at midnight, claim to see strange things in the windows. They report seeing a pale, glowing figure wearing a massive white gown standing in the second floor window. The ghostly woman stares out toward the distant iron furnaces, waiting endlessly for a lover who will never ever come back. The sheer spiritual energy required to move heavy silk inside a sealed vacuum is absolutely massive. It speaks to the incredible power of Anna's lingering resentment, her total hatred for her father, and her deep sorrow over her lost love created a permanent supernatural storm. The beautiful dress acts as the ultimate lightning rod for her dark rage. Even local dogs walking near the property sense the heavy dark presence. They suddenly stop on the sidewalk and growl fiercely at the empty museum windows. The animals refuse to cross the property line, and their neck hairs stand straight up. They instinctively know that an extremely powerful and angry entity paces furiously inside those cold stone walls. The Historical Society continues to carefully preserve the mansion and its incredibly haunted contents. They treat the wedding dress with extreme caution during routine cleaning. Only senior staff members are allowed to open the heavy glass case. They always politely announce their presence to the empty room before ever touching the fragile yellowing silk fabric of the cursed gown. New employees are often skeptical of the wild ghost stories until they experience the absolute terror themselves. One new curator tried to straighten a fold in the fabric and felt icy dead fingers brush against her warm hand. She dropped her tools and ran screaming from the grand bedroom, refusing to ever enter that specific area ever again. The Baker Mansion remains a magnificent architectural marvel, but its true draw is the terrible human tragedy contained inside. Elias Baker built the massive home to loudly announce his immense permanent power. Instead, the house stands as a grim, eternal monument to his awful cruelty and the total destruction of his own innocent daughters' absolute happiness and bright future. Anna never got to hear the joyous ringing of church bells on a bright sunny morning. She never felt the warm embrace of her beloved iron worker at an altar. She only knew the cold, bitter reality of isolation and broken promises. Her spirit refuses to move on until she experiences the beautiful wedding she was so cruelly denied. Some nights, the phantom dancing is slow and incredibly mournful. The silk sways gently back and forth like a slow, gentle heartbeat. During these quiet moments, a deep, heavy sadness fills the entire room. It is the profound sorrow of a lonely ghost reliving the beautiful memory of a sweet, stolen kiss by the dark river so long ago. Other nights, the dancing becomes frantic, violent, and entirely, completely chaotic. The fabric whips around furiously, striking the thick glass with loud, heavy thuds. This violent display represents her pure, absolute, boiling anger. It is the terrible wrath of a woman who was held captive by society and trapped completely by a monstrous, unfeeling, and terribly cruel rich father. Paranormal experts believe that items connected to extreme emotional trauma can absolutely absorb spiritual energy. The beautiful wedding gown was the single most important object in Anna's tragic life. It represented all her beautiful hopes and all her terrible, ultimate failures. It is no surprise that her trapped, restless soul remains completely tethered to those fragile, yellowing silk threads. Visitors who stare deeply into the glass case often catch a strange, frightening reflection. For a split second, they do not see their own modern face in the thick glass. They see the pale, weeping face of a young woman from the 1800s. Her dark eyes are utterly wide with endless terror and pure, absolute, heartbreaking, bottomless grief. The story of the dancing dress serves as a dark, terrible warning about the true cost of greed and absolute control. Elias Baker thought he could buy everything, including his own daughter's ultimate destiny. He learned too late that human will and deep romantic love are far stronger than any cold iron furnace or giant pile of bright gold. If you ever travel to Altoona, Pennsylvania, and walk through the heavy wooden doors of the old Baker mansion, listen extremely closely. Stand very still near the ancient grand staircase and wait for the absolute silence to settle. You might just hear the faint, terrifying sound of a very slow, sad waltz playing completely, entirely out of nowhere. Follow that eerie, cold music into the shadows of the dark, restored bedroom. Look upon the old glass display case and watch the yellowing ancient fabric very carefully. You will see the terrible, absolute truth with your own widely open, terrified eyes. The heavy silk will slowly begin to lift and twist entirely on its own accord. Anna Baker is still trapped inside that massive stone house, waiting for her lost true love. Her beautiful wedding dress dances continuously in the empty, cold air. She dances endlessly, entirely alone, without a groom, without a future, and without any hope of finding true eternal peace in the dark, vast, and totally terrifying spiritual beyond.